Following is a conversation between myself and Tony Dooley of Life Below the Surface, also known as SQUID on Instagram. And I can tell you that that name is very fitting. I've blue water spearfished with Tony many times, and this guy is a squid in the water. But today's discussion is really about how land-based hunters should look at spearfishing as another hunt. Spearfishing and land-based hunting have always lived in separate worlds, right? Very little overlap, not a lot of people doing both, and there's really no reasons for that. Yes, there's certain obstacles that a land-based hunter is going to face if they choose to go spearfishing, but we break that all down in this discussion, and Tony and I both believe that it's an awesome opportunity for any hunter out there. So let's dive right in.
My introduction was definitely different than how guys do it nowadays with the classes and proper instruction and all that. But I was living in New Jersey and actually cut my teeth on spearfishing off the jetties there, shooting blackfish and striped bass. And there was this Australian guy who was a lifeguard, and he was working there in the summers, and he was way older than us. You know, we were kids, and he was going out and shooting these fish, and we're like, his name was G-Man. We're like, G-Man, what is up with that?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, mate, like you can go get a spear gun, like whatever. And so we did the whole thing, and next thing you know, we were spearfishing. Like we didn't even surf anymore. And
I feel like that's like people that are my age, your age, Tony, that's like a more standard way they got into spearfishing. And now that world's changed, right? Like a lot of guys are getting into it in a more formal way, but that's a new thing, right? I think everybody was like, it was like ad hoc for a while, right?
yeah, and you know, like in the 60s, I guess it would have been like maybe late 50s, 60s, spearfishing was a huge sport, you know, especially in Europe.
Oh, okay.
It was I don't call it mainstream, but like, you know, it wasn't like people didn't know what it was all about.
Right.
My first time bringing a spear gun across the beach in the summer in Long Beach Island, I had the cops called on me.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you doing? I'm going spearfishing.
Right.
They didn't even know what I was doing. Like nobody was doing it back then. This would have been in like, you know, the late 90s.
Yeah.
And then we like graduated to Barnegat Inlet and started doing, you know, boat traffic, and the Coast Guard's right there all the time. And what are you guys doing? And we were shooting good fish, man. Nice big bass and stuff. And now it's probably like commonplace there. Everybody's spearfishing.
So where you started, there's still a spearfishing scene today.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just had one of the guys that I used to dive with back in the day, Dave Werner. He just came down here and did a trip out and shot his first wahoo. And so it's not a, you know, the sport just, I feel like it's either exploding or I'm just so involved in it that it seems like it is, but I couldn't tell you like on a mainstream level.
I think I have the same perspective of it, that it's growing. And I have a lot of friends in the hunting world, and I'm sure we'll dive into it, that have all of a sudden become interested in it. And I don't know if that's, you know, there's a couple big people in the hunting world, or guys with big followings that have played with it. Some like Steve Ranella with Meat Eater. He's done some episodes on spearfishing, and I know that he has a personal interest in it. And there's some other guys too. So I don't know if it comes from that, but it sure seems like it's percolating up. But I have the same issue, man. I don't know if it's just because I've become interested in it. You know what I mean? So now all of a sudden I'm talking to more people about it. And so I don't know if that's what it is. And the other thing is, I don't know, is social media, man. Like literally I open up my Instagram and it's like everything spearfishing, you know, whereas 3 years ago it would have been everything was hunting, because that's what I was doing day to day. So you can get this odd perspective on what's hot. But I think it's growing, man. I mean, do you see it in your business? Do you see more demand?
For sure. Like a lot of people get in touch with me and, hey, I never spearfished before, but I've seen the photos and I'd like to check it out. You know, like it looks really cool. And I think what's so neat about spearfishing is like, even with the GoPro, like first person point of view videos that you'll see posted and stuff, you don't get the whole experience. Like you have to do it. You have to disconnect and go into a foreign environment and like realize what it really means to be that small, you know, and be a part of something that you're not supposed to be a part of in order to really appreciate it. And I think that's what really grabs people once they do it. They're like, what? This is next level.
Well, and reflecting on just my personal experience, Tony, I think it's very analogous to like a certain type of hunting, where I don't think that, like if you go do like, you know, wilderness hunts and you have never been exposed to that, there's going to be this holy shit moment, you know? And I feel like particularly blue water spearfishing for me, like when you jump in the first time and you see the flasher and you see the chum and, you know, you see fish or you see sharks or you see whatever, I don't think there's anybody, unless they were just like grew up doing it, then they're not going to be like, oh, holy shit, this is like a new thing that I got to get comfortable with. And I think personally, man, that's part of the addiction for me, and that's always been a part of the addiction for hunting too, man. Is it's like
The fear factor.
well, yeah, it's like the fear factor, but it's also the discomfort.
Yeah.
Because there's an element, man. I mean, I'll be honest, dude. There's an element sometimes when I'm, you know, spearing with you or Alberto or whoever. I'm like, fuck this. I don't know if this is for me. You know what I mean? but then I, you know, then you reflect on it and you want to get better at it, so you come back. I think, you know, guiding elk hunters, I think I get used to it because I've been doing it for so long, but I think a lot of people have the same experience, you know.
Yeah, and I think that discomfort can never go away. It doesn't matter how many hours you log in the water, how good of a spear fisherman you are, that discomfort, there's always going to be a factor that you can't contain out here.
Yeah.
And like the line getting wrapped around your neck, like you're getting spun, you know, like instances that we've had on trips. And the best you can do is just try and control that. So, you know, like that to me is also like a catalyst for me wanting to go every day. Is like, man, it's like you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what you're going to see.
No. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and every time I go, I see something new. But I'm obviously much newer to you than you. But what's interesting from my perspective with you, Tony, is you take quite a few. Like when I called you, I would call myself. I mean, I'm still very much a new diver, a new spear fisherman. I've dove off and on, but you're a guy that's pretty open to taking, you know, people with very little experience blue water spearfishing. So I guess one of my questions on that is like, do you feel that you're uniquely set up for that? Do you feel like you have a different personality or operation or, you know, anything that makes you different that allows you to provide that? And I guess, you know, why aren't other guys doing that at least I see in the spearfishing world?
Man, I don't want to say I'm different or compare myself to anybody else, but I know like one of the most important parts of our operation here and in Panama or anywhere is like safety is always paramount, you know? So, I mean, I shot the waterman survival class for 10 years. I don't even know how many of those classes that I went through. Amazing class. You know, you learn safety foremost, but you also learn great dive technique and the buddy system and all that kind of stuff. And so just by doing that so much, it just became second nature, like what I'm looking for in a diver. That's why I feel comfortable bringing guys out. They say, hey, I don't really have any blue water experience, but I free dive. Or, I mean, most of these guys have some sort of free diving background. They're not just going to jump into blue water. Like, that's crazy. But, so yeah, so like, I feel like I can help them kind of like go to the next. Everyone has to start somewhere.
Right.
So where is that starting spot? You know, and I'll happily be that starting spot because I would rather take the guys out that they're seeing sharks for the first time and they're seeing this environment for the first time than take the guys out that are like, oh, I'm just trying to get my personal best wahoo. And like, they're not as enjoyable clients as the guys that are open to learning and seeing things for the first time.
No, I feel like the same way guiding hunts, the same deal. I mean, guys that like just, you know, wake up in the morning in camp and they look across the horizon and they're like, this is beautiful, man. Like those are the guys that are fun to guide. And everything's new to them, so that's a huge plus. But I guess, you know, one question I have, Tony, is like if a guy hasn't dove at all, like let's say he's gone snorkeling a little bit, he's a big hunter or whatever. What's the first step? What should they do, you think? I mean, does a guy need to go, I mean, is the best step to go take a free dive class, go to Florida, go somewhere easy in the US and take a free dive class?
I think that's one of the obvious answers. Just because you want that foundation down, you're going to enjoy the diving that you're doing out in the wild if you have a good, you know, training like a foundation to build off of. With that being said, though, I feel like there's a lot of like just pop-up guys that are like, oh, I'm going to teach you how to free dive.
Yeah.
And I know, like, especially talking to the FII guys or the PFI guys, that they're like, man, the course is actually not beneficial to the diver. They're teaching the wrong techniques or whatever. And so I think you should just do a little research before just jumping in and like, I'm going to join this course. To make sure that, you know, the guy that's teaching it is kind of on point, you know.
Dude, it's really interesting because I actually had this conversation like 2 days ago with a friend. He asked me, he's done some spearing, but not a whole lot. And he was asking me about that because I think I've taken 3 or 4 different courses, like over a long period of time, like over the last 20 years. And the best ones I've taken, well, Joe, the Waterman class, that's been the best one I've taken. Now, it's hard for me. I think he runs a great class, but I think I was at a different stage in my diving when I did it, where I could get maybe a little bit more out of it. But just in general, I didn't think, you know, Tony, that I would like the formal structure of it. And I think that's why I've actually done, you know, some like kind of ad hoc free diving classes, because I'm like, oh, I don't need like the formal deal. I don't need to go with like the branded one. But what's funny is that was kind of the first one that was under that FII like curriculum, and I liked it way better. And and I liked it because I and not that the other classes like pushed depth or anything like that. I think I just self-imposed like, well, this is not a success unless I dive 80 feet or whatever. Whereas that class, man, right? They say it's not about the depth, and it's really not. Like, a matter of fact, if you dive down with Joe and you go to the bottom of the line, it's all good, and you come up, he'll tell you all the bad form stuff you did. He doesn't give a shit about the fact, you know.
He's classic for making he calls them shit sandwiches. He says you got to put the compliment on the bottom, the shit in the middle, and then a little piece on top to make them feel good about themselves. But he is such, I can't say enough about Joe Sheridan. He's such a good instructor, and I've learned a lot from him. My free diving came a long way after I took his class and then started diving with him a bunch and stuff. And then also, you know, even to like dive into the classes a little bit more, there's an FII course. It's taught by John Dernalis, he's an amazing hunter, just a great instructor. And it's specific for spearfishing. And that's the only class that I know of that, you know, you can go and learn specific spearfishing techniques, because all of these FII classes, level 1, level 2, waterman survival, there's not even a mention of a spear gun in those classes. It's all about technique and safety.
Yeah, and like the free diving as a sport really is kind of the focus. They mentioned that in the class, and it does sound interesting. One thing that's I know, like a lot of my audience, one of the challenges is just, you know, going somewhere to do it, because most people are going to have to travel, right? Like if you live in Montana, Colorado, something like, you know, one of those areas. I mean, I could be wrong, Tony, because I think there are like some places there might be free diving classes, maybe like pool-based ones, but I don't know that there'd be the best option. Is there a geographic location in the U.S. that's best to go?
Well, man, I mean, I know there's guys doing
Florida,
even inland, like they do it in quarries. Yeah, they're doing free diving classes all over. I mean, look at Jake. You just met Big Jake, and
I want to talk about that.
Yeah, he's pretty landlocked, and that guy just seems to find all the deep dives and big freshwater.
What is the word? What's your feeling on this freshwater thing?
Man, I love it. It's like,
is it growing?
Oh, for sure. And it's another like foreign thing to me. Like I tried it a little bit up in Alaska and some other places, and it's just like it's different. The carp in Washington State, so they're an invasive species.
Oh, okay.
And so we would go in, I think it's Lake Washington actually, right there by Seattle, and these kids took me and we'd dive and shoot carp, and it's fun. But it gets old. I mean, these guys are shooting 25 carp in a day, and it's just like, you know, it's a blast. But my point is that people are finding a way to do this all over the place. Like,
well, in the freshwater thing is interesting because I'd never heard about it, and well, I like maybe I'd seen it somewhere, but I thought it was just kind of like, honestly, I thought freshwater spearfishing in the States was really just the guy that like used to live by the ocean, but he got stuck in some inland state, and he still had all of his gear, and he wanted to go spearfishing, right? But that's kind of how I viewed it if I ever saw a picture of somebody that was clearly freshwater spearfishing. But I mean, I hear about like this big tournament they have in it's like one of the big lakes, right? They do like a multi-day thing. So there's a lot of guys doing it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I
It's
do.
like I'm spacing on it too. But yeah, I don't know the details on it. I think I'm actually I'm gonna do an interview with Jake and try to get his feel for it, and he can give me the insight on it. But it is interesting. I think the biggest hang up, man, for the freshwater stuff is regulatory.
Sure.
You know. And what is that about in the spearfishing world? I feel it's so weird to me, Tony, that everywhere I go, there seems to be regulatory hang-ups with spearfishing, like what you can't shoot. And I guess I shouldn't call it hang-ups, but there's like it's different than rod and reel stuff in a lot of places.
It can be in some places for sure. I would say most places just kind of go by the rod and reel regs. Okay. I mean, here in Puerto Rico, there's no spearfishing specific rules.
Yeah.
You know, for example, Desecheo Island, you can't fish within a half a mile there.
Yeah.
So you go outside of a half a mile and you're talking about thousands of feet of water.
Yeah.
So there's no reef spearfishing there, but
yeah.
there's also no reef rod and reel. You know,
Right.
it's just kind of
the
same. You go to the British Virgin Islands, a couple islands over, and you can't have a spear gun at all. Can't even have a spear gun on your boat. It's completely illegal. But fishing's okay. You know, you get the local license and you can fish or whatever. But so
what do you think it is? You think it's like a lobbying power? Not lobbying's not the right word, but do you think it's just that there hasn't been enough participants in it to like kind of have a seat at the table? Is that?
I think that the money's not in it.
Yeah.
Like it is in big game hunting. You know, like sure. They don't have enough representation because there's not enough money, not enough following. A lot of times spear fishermen catch the wrong end of the stick. They're like, you guys are, you know, you're killing all the reef fish, or you're, all the sharks are getting worse because you guys are chumming and doing this. And it's just like, man, I'm in the water every day. I see the difference and the dent that spear fishing makes compared to all of these other guys that go live baiting. They'll set up on a spot and they'll throw live bait, not to hate on the live bait guys, because I'm sure they're all call me out on it.
That's how I like it.
But they catch all the rainbow runners in one area, you know, and you're wiping those rainbow runners out. You see the pictures where the deck is just full of rainbows. And you're like, man, that's the food source for wahoo. That's a food source for those big pelagic fish. And when you take 100 of them out of the water.
Yeah, it obviously has an impact. Sure. Well, just in general, like the ocean is, this is probably this may sound weird to you, Tony, but one of the reasons I kind of gravitate towards spearfishing is, see, I'm naive, man. When I jump in the water here with you, I'm like, oh, this is like, everything's perfect. There's tons of fish. Like, it's like this intact ecosystem. Like, that's how I view it, because I haven't seen like any progression over the years or different places. I haven't been exposed to like, commercial fish. I don't know like the nitty gritty of everything. Okay. In the hunting world, I do. Like, because I've been around it so long. Like, I know areas of certain states and stuff that are overhunted. I know all the regulations, all the, history of the regulations and stuff. So I almost get jaded by it, in that world, because I'm like, man, it's so complicated. It's so hard to get a tag. It's so hard to get everything. Right. If I just want to go spearfishing, I just, call up Tony and go spearfishing, or, go off the shore with a buddy or whatever. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Am I just naive, or?
No, I think it's the same. Like the hunting spearfishing thing in regards to finding a target species is very similar. Like, as a lifelong hunter, if you want to target elk in a certain area, you're looking at a map and you're going to see where a river meets a certain bend on a certain, direction, and that's going to be a good spot. Like, it's just an educated guess, right? Yeah. It's the same thing out here. Like, we're sitting right now on thousands of feet of water. We've been drifting. You jumped in the water now, you're not going to see anything. Nothing. Right. Yeah, but if we go up to the pinnacle, I know, like, hey, if the current's running a certain direction and the bait's here, the big fish are going to be behind it. So it's an educated guess. You don't see it all the time, but you can get an idea of, like, hey, the fish are going to be here, and that's where I need to be during this tide, during this current, during this location. So
Well, having said that, like, in areas, I don't notice it here in Puerto Rico at all, but I follow tons of guys in Florida, and I'm making an assumption that a lot of them are fishing in the same spots. You know what I mean, Tony? Is like, let's say the guys that, you know, spear wahoo in Florida, do they, and I, you know, I'm just more than anything asking your opinion on it. As interest in that activity grows, is there conflicts on the spots because everybody's like learning, you know, okay, this is a good wahoo spot, or is that not?
Yeah,
really,
it's the fishing spot conundrum, you know,
yeah.
You can't go spearfishing by yourself, especially blue water. So you got to bring a buddy, but you want to bring him to a spot that you know that not everybody knows. You bring your buddy there.
So it's the same
Next thing you know, he's marking it on his Navionics, and you go there 2 weeks later, and he's there with a different boat. And you're like, okay. So we keep our crew really tight.
Yeah, sure.
We have our spots. I mean, we have a lot of spots around here that are kind of like hush hush.
Yeah, your spots. Yeah.
Our spots that we don't share with other people. I rarely take clients to.
Yeah,
but
I got you.
But those type of spots are very weather dependent and few and far between.
Yeah. So there's a lot more analogies on that front to hunting than I kind of first thought, dude. Because it's the same deal, man.
Yeah.
Like it's the same deal. Like, you know, probably. Yeah, dude. Like keeping your spots close-holed make a big difference. But the thing is it's funny, man, because as a new guy coming to the sport, particularly going with people who know what they're doing, you don't view that, dude. You just, like, I jump in the water and I'm like, oh, dude, a wahoo showed up here in like 10 minutes. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it happens all the time, but I'm just saying that, like, oh, I'm not accounting for the fact that there's been like a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, you're not accounting for the years of like, okay, this is what the weather's doing, and I know the current's running to the north today. That's why this interview, I'm like, all right, we got to go fish because the current's changing. But
no, I got you.
No, I'm just saying, like, you know, that's years of experience that comes with that I think that's where they're going to be. They're going to be on the south side today because of what the current we have, and look at this weather. Like, it's awesome.
Right.
So, yeah, like, I think clients do take that for granted. But it's almost better that they're so naive to it because it's not something you really want to explain on a charter. You just want to have fun.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting to understand the dynamic as I get more into it. And dude, it's constant analogies with hunting for me, Tony. Like, and the thing is like, it's actually changed my hunting or my thought around hunting some because, dude, in the hunting world, there's always this perception of, like, you know, you drive by some elk, right? Or you hike by some elk, or my case, I was always like riding my horses by elk, like in the wilderness. And a lot of times they just sit there and stare at you, right? But the minute you look at them, or in your mind, you decide that, hey, let's ride up in these trees and let's try to shoot one, all of a sudden they leave, right?
It's the energy,
Right. Sure. But dude, on land, it's almost like a myth, right? If you talk to land-based hunters, they're like, it's almost like, people will say that, but it's like a myth. Here, it's not a myth. Like,
yeah, and I think it's less of a myth than you think on land. Like, I mean, that's how.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Spearfishing, I think, convinced me that it's not a myth at all.
No, it's not a myth. Yeah. I mean, that's how animals. That's how animals communicate, is through energy, you know. And like, you look at these fish, like, you can't deny the lateral lines that they just absorb energy. So if you're in the man, how many times I've been in the water and I have my camera and those wahoos swim right up to me. Like, without effort. But when I have my gun and my energy is switched and I'm hunting, man, they know. They know that you're either in competition with them or you're trying to get them, or, you know, it's So it's survival out here, you know.
So much more blatant in the water. I mean, during that course, during Joe's course over here, we had wahoo come in. Obviously, none of us had guns.
Yeah.
They came to the weight, I think. You were just curious.
Sure.
Which that's pretty. They seem to be fairly curious fish, right?
Yeah.
And so they came in, and one of the guys there had a flasher on his belt, and he kept throwing this flasher, and it was like walking the wahoo to us over and over and over again. We could have shot him like 50 times.
Well, that's what we did with your fish, the big one that you got, right? We threw the throw flasher and it on the surface.
Yeah, it comes up.
Yeah. Exactly.
I didn't have to die for that one. But it's amazing, man, like the vibe of, there's so many that I've screwed up. They come in and I'm like, oh, I want to kill it. And immediately like turn to it, chase it like you guys tell me not to all the time, whatever, and it's just like gone. But dude, with you know, it just seems so much more apparent in the water. And dude, you know the thing that's weird about it, Tony, is I see, and I mean, maybe I'm naive on this, but I see the inverse with sharks. So like land-based predators, people always ask me about bears, lions, that sort of thing. The reality is, man, like, even if you spend a lot of time in the wilderness, like, you don't deal with that many close encounters with those predators. I think a lot of times they're avoiding you. They're like keyed in on certain things. Here with the sharks, man, you're gonna see them quite often, and the same vibe matters, but it's like inverse, right?
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember in the ocean, the shark is the ultimate apex predator.
Yeah.
On land, like I guess like a bear, I think bears see a lot of humans.
Yeah, sure.
You know, like sharks at certain spots here, maybe they don't see so many humans.
Yeah.
And man, they just want to eat. That's
Yeah.
all they want to do is eat. And if you're
Yeah.
in their way, they have nothing that ever threatens them out there.
Yeah.
So until you come along with a spear gun and say, hey, back off, like give them a little poke,
Sure.
or show aggressiveness, show the energy. You have to be assertive. If you start flailing on the surface of the water and you're like, oh my God, a shark. I mean, they're going to know. They're going to know that.
Sure.
But you stand your ground, you make eye contact. I mean, every day we're poking them in the nose, and then they usually go away and they leave you alone, or they remember and they know, hey, like, maybe this guy's the apex predator. Sure. It's a respect thing, like.
But what's weird, man, is like the first few times I dealt with or I encountered them. One, I mean, if you're with other divers who are not, everybody's cautious, but they're not like, scared out of their mind, then you tend to be calmer. But man, now even at my level, I can see a shark and have a feel of like, yeah, I'm not really like worried about him. And then another one, I'll be like, I'm kind of worried about him.
So a good analogy I use for my clients that express worry about the sharks. I say, imagine you're walking down the street here in Puerto Rico where we have a lot of stray dogs.
Yeah.
Are you going to go up and pet that stray dog?
Right.
No way. You're going to be like, I'm probably going to keep my distance, but you're not afraid of it, right? Unless it comes barking and coming at you. So I think if you approach the sharks the same way, you respect them, you let them respect you. And now that being said, like they will bite.
Yeah, they're dangerous.
They're dangerous. It's not like
you can't be like
Yeah, I mean, I've had them bite my fins. I've had them take the chum bag. And, all of that stuff. As probably everybody that does this all the time has had the same experience. But it's just man, it's just another element out here that makes it what it is. It makes it awesome.
But it's cool. Like anybody who's watching this that would be deterred by it. Like when people tell me they're deterred. Like actually, Rogan's deterred by sharks big time. Like he's not making it up. Like he.
But don't you think it's just because he doesn't have enough experience with them?
Yeah,
if you got him in the water and he came face to face a few times, he'd be like, oh, you know what? Like that guy's seen so much more scary things face to face in the ring than he has with a shark. Like come on.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I don't think it should deter people, dude. I think it should like actually encourage people because it's like it's like a sideshow, but at the same time, not really. Like, in the blue water diving, it's kind of, to me, it's still sometimes like the main event is just watching the sharks. It's kind of cool. I'm sure you get worn out. With them,
well, it changes your dynamic, your approach to the hunt too. A lot of times the sharks will come in with rainbows. Yeah. And you're like, oh, there's some nice rainbows, and we'll shoot the rainbow runners right off the shark. You pull the trigger. They hear the noise and that, like, at least the ones here. I can't speak for everywhere. Sometimes the bands bring the sharks in, but they'll take off. But then also, if you see a wahoo and there's sharks, now you're like, okay, I got to make sure the shot placement is correct. Because if I miss the good placement and this thing runs, it's gonna eat my fish. It's gonna take my slip tip. It's gonna take my shaft. Yeah. And then now you're out a couple $100. Yeah.
So it changed. It's just like an added element to the whole deal. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I gotta ask, man. You've been here in Puerto Rico diving for how long? How many years?
I moved to Puerto Rico in 2001, and my first like kind of blue water run-in was with this guy Jimmy Plumer. He was doing charters back then, and we would do maybe one a month, but we would do a lot of diving together. Yeah. And then I got tied in with the legends of the island, the guys that like people don't even know about. Yeah. And I was lucky because I got to learn from them, from Greg Carson, Craig Prothers, Roberto Reyes. I mean, these guys are like, guys that are spearfishing blue water now probably don't even know their names, and they're like, these are the guys that like laid the foundation down.
Yeah, I've spent some time with Roberto and just like looking through all of his gear. I can look at his gear and be like, oh yeah, this guy's been on some adventures.
That guy is an animal. He's a beast, and he's one of the sweetest guys too.
Yeah, he's a great guy. But where I was going with on that is, have you seen a big difference in the shark population?
Dude, this is
Yeah, they're getting worse.
Yeah,
like
there's more of them.
infinitely more sharks than there was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We would never get a wahoo eaten 10 years
really?
ago. And now it's like a constant thing. And I know there's this big push for shark conservation, but I don't feel like that would do anything here.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel like people are culling so many sharks here that it would affect how many sharks we're seeing. I just think there's a lot more fishing activity in general.
Yeah.
A lot more guys hooking into tuna, and it's just a dinner bell, and so.
Yeah. Oh, so you're not sure that there's really been like a huge influx in sharks because the conservation wouldn't. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I just think there's more opportunity for them to eat with the assistance of humans, like fishing or
I got you.
and for sure chumming. Like I mean, we chum like.
They get used to it.
Yeah, they get used to eating from us, and that can get dangerous because once they get comfortable and once you get comfortable, it's like that. What's that? The 200-hour pilot rule. That's when you get comfortable doing something, and that's when you crash, right? So you just gotta be.
Yeah.
I think one of the most incredible things about spearfishing is environmental awareness, right? Like there's no cell phones down there. There's no communication. You're not talking to your buddy. Like all of your senses are completely closed off except for your sight, and you're hearing a little bit, but it makes you really aware of your environment that you cannot be above the surface.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like the ultimate reason to get into spearfishing, to let your body just relax and turn off all the bullshit that exists in the world today, because there's enough of it, and for me, I come out here and I'm like, I can breathe, I can relax, and
it's
pretty amazing.
Meditative in a sense.
100%.
Cool, man. Well, hey, I want to finish off the interview, Tony, talking about this concept that we're putting together for next year.
Awesome.
Because I think a bunch of people who, from the hunting world, who have maybe dabbled a little bit in diving would be interested. But we're still working out the details. Maybe it's going to be a just an all-inclusive thing, or it might be a liveaboard deal here in Puerto Rico. But give them the rundown on it. I'm excited about it, but I got to let you.
Yeah, no, this is going to be pretty cool, and I don't know that this has ever been done in Puerto Rico before, so it'll be a unique opportunity where we'll pick the clients up here on the West Coast, and we got a 48 lagoon that'll be the mothership, and basically we're going to go down the west side and across the south side, and we're going to target different species along the way. We're going to do like a little like a free dive, intro to free dive. I can have an instructor on board if they want, if they're at that level, if they're really fresh to it. We can learn how to free dive. We can go over techniques, classroom style, like, hey, this is the equipment. This is how we approach certain species. And then we get to apply it in the same day.
So depending on the group, there's some flexibility on this whole, because I think this prerequisite deal, if for a lot of people that are watching this, that's going to be an issue. They're just going to be like, I don't know if I can do it or not. But if they book this group, this trip with you, and it's 3 or 4 guys that, maybe they've only snorkeled in Hawaii once or whatever, like you can adjust it to a group like that.
Exactly. The idea is we want people that have never gone blue water before. We want to take people and show them something that they haven't seen before. Sure. And doing it with baby steps. So we get the foundation down first with the freediving certification. Right. Then it goes to, okay, now we're going to do a little reef stuff. Let's apply what you learned there to the reef. Then we go from the reef to blue water, and then after 4 days, they're off to the races. Sure. And I think like just to be able to see the whole south side of the island and
Well, and it's a cool way to see Puerto Rico too, man. Like. So basically what we're talking about, we're in Rincon here, and I actually live on the other side of the island for about half the year, and it's basically going from here to there.
Yeah, we go down to the point, like Cabo Rojo, and then we turn and head to Palmas, which is a clear, like, it's 130 miles or something like that.
Something like that.
But there's so much to see and do along the way. So it's not going to be like it's going to be an intense spearfishing adventure, but it's also going to be a lot of like pulling into different anchorages and seeing different towns and a cultural experience as well as just like
No, I mean, like you said, Tony, like when we started chatting about it, I think it's a great idea. I think it's like an awesome idea, probably a fairly unique opportunity for anybody that's wanting to, just wanting to like take the leap into spearfishing, because you can get with a couple buddies and book this deal and really go from, I mean, I wish it was around when I first started, because I would have freaking jumped on it, man. You can go from being like very apprehensive about it to at the end of the week having done like some super cool stuff. Not just went and struggled somewhere for a day or two. Like really see progression in the activity, and either become addicted to it or chalk it up to just an awesome adventure. So. Of course. But yeah, Tony will have details on his website on that here, I'm sure, pretty soon, and I'll put some info out on it too. Tony, tell them where they can keep in touch with you and all of that.
Yeah, so excuse me, the best place would be our website. It's lifebelowthesurface.com. All of my charters in Puerto Rico and Panama are up on the site. We also offer some like a la carte style stuff out in Alaska if you wanted to put a custom trip together for that in the summertime.
We didn't talk about that.
So that's a cool trip. I haven't done it the last couple of years, but I'm looking forward to getting back there and doing some more trips.
That's on Tony's bucket list, killing the world record halibut, right? With the spear gun.
I would love to get the Pacific halibut record for sure, but yeah, right now I'm pretty focused on Puerto Rico. I'm putting a lot of time into here, and I really want this thing to be awesome. I leave in a week for Panama, and I do the season down there, and that's like turnkey. We've been doing that for 15 years. Yeah. So I mean, that adventure is. I tried to get you on this year, but I know you got the elk hunts and stuff.
Yeah, my bad. I had some bear hunts.
Yeah, but we'll get you down there so you can check it out. And the idea is just I really am into bringing new people into the sport. I'd love to show them the island that I consider this home. I've been here for 20 years. Yeah. And I feel most comfortable in the water. So to be able to share that with people that are from Montana or from like, the mountains and they're out there doing awesome hunts. Like let me show you one more hunt that you might not have even thought was out there.
Yeah, and dude, that's what I think. That's what people. If I had one piece of advice to hunters, my world is view spearfishing as like another hunt. Like it's got these obstacles that deter people. You've got to deal with the getting comfortable in the water a little bit, which like this trip would do, but really you got to view it as like another hunt, man.
But man, it's a challenge too, because it's probably the most challenging hunt, because number one, you got to hold your breath. Number two, you got to dive deep. Yeah. Well, relatively deep. Number three, you're using a piece of wood with a couple rubber bands on it. You're not using a shotgun or a rifle or So
no.
I think to bridge that gap between land-based hunters and bring it into spearfishing, I think that could be a super challenging thing for them.
Oh yeah.
That would for the guys that are up to it.
Yeah. That's the thing. Yeah. But anyways. Thanks for joining me, Tony. We'll jump in here and try to shoot one more.
Yeah, let's go get some fish, man. It's too nice out here.